Have any of you or someone you know married for money? How did it turn out? My sister more or less married for money. She was 23, had a child out of wedlock. The dad is not a bad guy, but he's a pathological liar and kinda a loser, and was trying to get by on food stamps and public assistance while she finished college. She was introduced to her BFF's husband's friend. He was a moron, but had a pretty successful construction business and was looking to settle down. He had a son of his own. It was pretty obvious from the beginning my sister didn't really love the guy, just nothing in common. My mom was shell-shocked at the quickie justice of the peace wedding. I didn't even attend. Fast forward 18 months, the guy ended up sexually assaulting her BFF, while the husband was asleep on the couch downstairs. My sister does what she thinks she should and believes her husband that they were all drunk and it just happened, was consensual. She loses the BFF forever, the hubby goes to jail. She divorced him from prison. She was lucky she never had a kid with the douche nozzle, got out clean. She didn't try to take anything from him, just got out, and found a great guy she's been married to for a decade now. We all knew it wasn't going to work and, well, it didn't. Best resolution we could have hoped for, excepting, the assault. Divorced now, but had married into some wealth. Not extreme wealth, but greater wealth than anybody I had ever known at the time. $1 million homes, vacation properties, and whatnot. I came from a family that had very few luxuries. We never bought expensive items or had fancy vacations or anything like that. We got by and lived in an alright suburb. Ex-wife's family on the other hand had a big home and acres of property in the countryside. Owned multiple properties at a mountain resort in another state. They were always buying us thousands of dollars worth of stuff, whether we needed it or not. Every time we left their house my car would be packed to the brim with stuff. They were also extreme couponers for some reason. The sister was a total money-hungry bee. She would throw full-on tantrums if she didn't get what she wanted, and then would steal somebody's debit card to make sure that she got it. She did this to both me and my ex-wife, as well as her parents on multiple occasions. Ex-wife was not like that but did have an affinity for luxury items. She would buy a new coach, Gucci, etc., item weekly. The parents eventually offered us one of their properties in the resort town as long as we promised to tear down and rebuild it. As if I had that kind of money. We ended up divorcing soon after that offer. My friends and family hated them. When we divorced they were absolutely wretched towards me and went out of their way to insult me and even tried to turn the Catholic Church against me. None of us are Catholic or attended church, so I have no clue why they tried, but they did. In the end, I was left penniless and with a mountain of debt and a home I could not afford. I scraped by until I was able to sell it, but my credit is pretty much screwed forever from bills I couldn't afford to pay. So yeah, I pretty much hate them. I didn't, but my mother did about 15 years ago, after divorcing my father. He keeps all of his wealth stashed away in an account that she can't access. The house and cars are bought and paid for and the utility bills are also covered. She won't ever have to worry about not having her basic needs met. But her disability check is our money, while his millions are his money. He gets legitimately upset about things like her buying organic eggs instead of regular, running the shower for 30 seconds while she grabs a towel from the other room, and going through the Taco Bell drive-thru because these things cost him his hard-earned cash, even though he's actually inherited most of his money from his father and she usually uses her disability check for extras. He emotionally abuses her every day, sometimes berating her until she cries and begs him to leave her alone. He insults her body and appearance. He hovers over her and harasses her while she eats. He picks apart and criticizes everything she says and does. According to what she's told me, they haven't slept together in years. I can remember exactly one time that I've seen him show any kind of affection toward her. I think he held her hand once while sitting on the couch sometime in 2005-ish. Other than that, I've never seen him kiss or hug or even touch her. The worst part might be that I think she prefers it that way. It is the most miserable, cold, lonely marriage I've ever seen. She is too dependent to leave. I know I would much rather die completely alone than married to someone like that. While I didn't marry for money, I found out he had a ton of it. I married young and was very stupid. The man I married, I thought, was an average guy. Not well off but not struggling. He came from a very sophisticated and educated family, so I knew they weren't idiots, but I didn't realize how much money they had until after I married him. As the marriage went on, the more money I realized that he had and the more I realized he was a miser. His entire life his family had the money to spend, but chose to leave as close to the bare necessities as normal. Now, I'm not knocking this, as evident by the fact that this money had more money than any other family I knew, and mainly because of the lifestyle that they decided on, but I am knocking how he ended up treating me. I came into the marriage with nothing, as most 21-year-old girls getting married come into a marriage. He, as I found out, had a lot coming into the marriage. Didn't sign a prenup. He was also 7 years older. From the day I said I do, it was an indebtedness. I constantly owed him for everything he ever bought for me. And he made sure I knew that. After I realized I had stopped eating because I didn't want to explain why I was spending money, because he checked the bank statements daily, and would comment on somebody got breakfast this morning. Or somebody bought XYZ today, I decided the marriage wasn't worth it. If I wanted to marry for money, I would have stayed in that marriage. His sister and brother just had babies, they got $30,000 apiece just for the kids from trust funds. Money is the root of all evil. I avoid it like the plague. I didn't marry him for his money, but he got pretty wealthy while I was with him. We met in college. Dated for 4 years while we were both dirt poor, but his parents were very well off, and then got married. My degree seemed to be a busy, so my career wasn't going anywhere. His took off after a couple of years and he moved up in salary fast over the years. I was with him a total of 11 years. We decided we were financially stable enough to have a child after 5 years married. I had a spotty job history in customer service, so we lived on his growing salaries. While I was pregnant, we met and made friends with a woman whom I became close to quickly. After a year, I was venting to her one day about his spending habits and disclosed how much money he made. Looking back, I realized she didn't seem to start getting closer to him until after that. He ended up leaving me for her less than a year later. So I didn't marry the guy for his money, but he was definitely changing during our decade together. The frivolous way he spent money and lived at the edge of his budget drive me nuts. We had no savings, he wouldn't pay off any debt, and every time he got a raise he would spend it. I strongly believe he was squirreling money away somewhere because even being extremely generous, I couldn't figure out how we were spending that much money every month like he said we were. I grew up dirt poor, so I have a very healthy respect for money and having savings. He's married to his affair partner now. They had a kid and she's a stay-at-home mom now. He was extremely manipulative to me and he's very good at it. She's manipulative too, but much more transparent. We'll see how long that lasts. I've lived that life with him and it sucks. This isn't about me, but it's about my mom, so I feel pretty qualified to talk about it. My mom grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere. She did well in school and went to a state college, where she met my dad, a graduate student studying abroad. He's from the UK. My mom pretty freely admits she wasn't happy with the farmer's wife kind of life that she saw her mom living, and she wanted a ticket out of there. I do believe she loved my dad, but a lot of the attraction was hitching a ride to his wagon, as he was about ready to finish his doctorate and had pretty decent prospects. They married and moved to the UK, then back to the US chasing various academic jobs and trying to make it up the ladder to deanship and consulting money as fast as possible. He always made pretty decent money, so she stayed home with us kids. In the end though, my father had the money and used it as a source of power. The power dynamic at home was never healthy, and my dad would constantly hold over everyone's head that he was the sole provider. Tried to get him to watch the kids, go to a school concert, help out at home? Ha! He brings home the bacon, everything else needed to be done by my mom. Period. In my whole childhood, he never bought a birthday gift, or made dinner because my mom had a hard day or anything like that. He did the absolute bare minimum and didn't really want anything to do with us kids, and thought we shouldn't really be either seen or heard. We used to hide out in the basement to play because of his hair-trigger temper. Because of getting out of the workplace, it was hard to get back in, and my father relentlessly opposed my mom doing it anyway. Eventually, when we were teenagers, she decided to go back to get a job in her field, as she had when they were first married but without kids, and worked her way back up from entry level. He absolutely hated it and of course wouldn't change his "I'm the provider, you do everything else" attitude. Now, long story short, my dad and I never really got along, so my mom was able to blame a lot of the family dynamics on that. I went away to college and they were separated within months. Without my dad being able to yell at me as a pressure valve, he directed it at my mom. He accused her of having an affair. She wasn't. Because of her work, he called her horrible names in front of my sisters, he threatened her with hell for not obeying her husband, the whole deal. Finally they divorced. My dad was shocked and couldn't understand why. He felt that marriage was about him paying and everyone else, wife, kids, obeying. He didn't think he did anything wrong. In the end, my mom went through some tough years, as my dad deliberately stole large amounts of money from her and got away with it through perjury, as well as making sure her credit was thrashed, but she kept working. She started dating. She ended up meeting a man of reasonably modest means and got remarried. My father couldn't have been angrier. He did everything in his power to destroy her, to turn us kids against her. It didn't work, but it was plain to see that the money he had was now being used as a weapon to deny her anything he could, at any cost. She's way richer now in pretty much every way. In terms of money in the bank, they probably have less. My dad is sitting on millions, but she can actually spend money without my dad flying into rages. She doesn't have to wait on anyone and they both contribute to the household. She is involved with managing the finances of the household and it's a true partnership. She lives in a beautiful home that they bought together and is very happy. My stepdad is a great guy and we all spend an enjoyable time together. It's clear their relationship isn't about power and ownership, it's about love. Being acquired just isn't a good idea. One person having the power leads to abuse of that power in all too many cases. For the same reason, even though I knew I was abandoning my inheritance doing so, I stopped seeing my father entirely because of his abusive and manipulative ways. One by one, my siblings did the same. My father remarried a gold digger who wanted a rich husband. Good luck to her, she can have that money. It just wasn't worth it. P.S. I found out as an adult that my father had been married when he met my mom, and unceremoniously dumped his wife to remarry. Classy guy. Yep. When I was 21, I met a girl from a very wealthy family. Well, not that wealthy, but wealthy to me, as I had grown up dirt poor, and I had spent the years from 18 to 21 living by my wits, stealing and scamming. This girl's parents were worth around 6 to 10 million, and she was madly in love with me. I was a narcissistic druggie. I didn't have anything else to do, so I married her. I didn't really know exactly how estranged from her parents, and their money, she actually was. I kept waiting for the cushy job with Dad's company, the free house, the big payouts. They didn't come. We got some stuff, a couple cars, a few trips to other countries, nice presents, but no big payout. After a time we had a kid, and the kid was spoiled rotten. I realized that even though I would never get my big payday, my child would never have to suffer and struggle the way I did when I was little. Eventually, I came to love her, for who she was. This had more to do with me getting my life together than anything else. It's been more than 10 years. It hasn't always been easy, but when I've wanted to leave, the thought that just another 5 or 10 years, and we will have enough money to travel and never work again, keeps me hanging on. I've definitely talked out things that I would have just said screw it if I hadn't thought, I've put up with her crap this long, there's no way I'm leaving before I get paid. The way I see it, most people are going to work a job they hate for 50 years, to get a little payout one day. I can get more by just staying married than I could ever get working, and it's not gonna take 50 years. My former BFF's sister did that very thing. She was 18 and incredibly gorgeous. Of Portuguese descent, flawless olive skin and light green eyes with long healthy dark hair framing her face. She was always a total brat, being the beautiful favorite of her parents' two daughters, the other being short and rotund with arguably inferior beauty. Wouldn't use anything that wasn't a name brand, wouldn't wear something twice to school, wouldn't ride in cars that weren't up to her specs, the works. Just a brat. She was working her first job at the mall and met a man who ran a few shops. He was 48, fat, a total mouth breather, and in pursuit. He hired her at nearly twice her pay at the other store and began wooing her with jewelry on their lunch breaks. He'd buy anything she wanted, so every day was shopping day for this girl. He proposed in the Bahamas and they married shortly after. He sired a kid with her, refused to let her work, cut her off from the money, became incredibly controlling, limited her exposure to her friends, threatened to divorce her and prove she was an unfit mother who refused to work and is unable to keep a job, gave her meal lists of things he wanted during the week, the whole works. The relationship got so bad that she started being more forthright about their arrangement. She screws him for money, nothing more nothing less. Because she despised him, she'd take lots of meds and pass out, leaving him with what is basically a living F-doll to play in all night. It was hideous. She told me she'd come out of it with cum all over her face and him spooning her while snoring. In the end, she left him, and believe me, he stalked her via peeping in windows and hiring private investigators, but he kept the kid. She got nothing and is now fat, a drunken junkie, and blaming everything but herself on what happened. Women who marry for money get exactly what they deserve. To be treated like the property they sold themselves as. Not me, but my aunt did. Her husband is a gigantic prick and she knows it. He is the most uptight man you will ever meet. You could shove coal up his butt and it would produce diamonds. He constantly hassles her about her weight, despite the fact that she is in excellent shape, and he does this in front of the family. I can't even imagine what he says in private. The last time my parents watched their kids he went crazy because we had let them play Angry Birds. This was during their summer vacation from school and we volunteered to watch their kids because my aunt was currently going through chemo. I know she hates being with him but she won't leave him because A, his family is loaded and B, they have two young kids and she doesn't want to break up the family. My mother married because she hated living with her aggressive mother, and was sort of in love with my father. She was a stay-at-home mom slowly working towards her degree, but now 22 years later, she's 45 and with barely 8 years of working experience, and she hates her relationship with my dad and hardly loves him anymore. It's a horrible marriage but she doesn't want a divorce because she won't have a maid, a brand new car, or basically money to buy every freaking thing she wants to buy. Personally I believe it's really horrible, and once she said she was going to get a lover to satisfy her emotionally. I was furious and told her it would be really horrible and she would be basically leeching off my father. It wasn't pretty. Ninja edit. To answer your questions about affairs and mistreatment, my dad is terribly aggressive. He has hit my mom in the past, and he will sometimes deny her money as a means of control, and insult her. My mother just leaves with it because she's emotionally and economically dependent. I have two distant cousins. Family gatherings were the only time I would see them. When they were in their late teens and early 20s, I would hear them talk about how their goal in life is to marry a rich guy and get pregnant. They were very vocal about this. Everyone in our families knew. They weren't uneducated either. Both of them were in college and finished, can't remember specifics. They were also fairly attractive, not so much in the face. I would rate their face a 6 to 7, but their bodies were 10s. They were tall and looked like models. The younger one got married first. She was 23. The guy she married was a genuinely nice guy. Very successful but not private jet or helicopter successful. They lived in a very nice place in the city and drove $80,000 cars. Months after they got married she is pregnant, just like she planned. A few years go by, and, surprise surprise, they are getting a divorce. Why? Because the economy tanked and his business failed. The kicker is that they still had millions of dollars after the market tanked in assets and investments. Apparently this wasn't enough for her. She now collects alimony. There are enough stories about this one to fill a book. The older one got married a few years ago. She was the uglier of the two but still very attractive. She, in my opinion, was also the smarter of the two. While still a gold digger, she was more about love. She had boyfriends she fell in love with but ended the relationships because they weren't rich enough. One of them was a small business owner whose business took off shortly after, and I remember her being depressed about it. Pathetic. She ended up marrying a very successful guy, and, surprise surprise, ended up pregnant months after. They are still together, and I give their relationship a decent chance of lasting only because she is more loving. Her sister is cold-hearted, and an all-around bee.